Today's budget by the costly coalition of the NDP and Liberals is a full frontal attack on the paychecks of hardworking Canadians. It equals $4,200 per family in new government spending. That's more inflation, more taxes, and more costs.
The Canadian government is fast becoming the architect of its own economic demise. Masked underneath the ideas of social safety and robust public services, Canada's bloated bureaucracy is stifling economic innovation and driving away opportunity. As this weight of bureaucracy grows heavier, the once thriving engine of the nation's economy sputters and strains under the burden of big government. The burden of such transactions of crony capitalism inadvertently allocates big costs to Canadian taxpayers, and therefore rob the citizens of freedom, opportunity, and prosperity they very much deserve. A Fraser Institute report on the size of government shows that consolidated government spending, the combined spending between the federal government and a given provincial government, as a share of GDP, increased from 37.7% in 2007 to 40.5% in 2022. A review of federal finances shows just how big the government has become in recent years. Ottawa is expected to spend about $151 billion more next year than it did in 2014 to 2015, the year before Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his party won government in November. It's not just expenses. Federal public service employment has increased by 31% in 7 years. The government has added nearly 80,000 employees to the roster during its tenure. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland's budget projects total expenses will be $496.9 billion by the end of the year, when there's no extraordinary pandemic-related spending. Under this plan, spending will move higher in the years to come. Her budget demonstrates Trudeau's government and their obnoxious spending will ring in at $555.7 billion in 2027 to 28. With the Liberal government spending reaching unprecedented heights and federal employment swelling by the thousands, the trajectory of Canada's economic future hangs precariously in the balance. In this gripping exposé, we delve deep into the heart of this harrowing tale, uncovering the sinister grip that big government and its accompanying bureaucracy hold over Canada's economic future and the dynamics of the activities. At its core, big government refers to a government that has become excessively large, controlling, and involved in the lives of its citizens. It's a government that seeks to regulate every aspect of society, from the economy to social issues, often at the expense of individual freedom and free market principles. In Canada, the growth of the big government has been a gradual process that has taken place over decades, but the results have been nothing short of devastating for the country's economy and its people. But it's not just the size of the government that's the problem, it's also the way that the government spends its money. In Canada, the government has taken an increasingly expansive role in society, providing a wide range of services and benefits that were once the domain of the private sector. From healthcare to education to social welfare programs, the Canadian government has become a behemoth, consuming vast amounts of resources and crowding out private sector investment. And while some may argue that these programs are necessary for the well-being of Canadians, the reality is that they come at a steep and very pesky cost. Take healthcare, for example. Canada's publicly funded healthcare system is often held up as a model for the world, but the truth is that it's far from perfect. Wait times for medical procedures are among the longest in the developed world, with patients often waiting months or even years for necessary treatments. According to a report by the Fraser Institute, the median wait time for medically necessary treatment in Canada was 22.6 weeks in 2020, the longest ever recorded. And in some provinces like Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, the wait times are even longer, with patients waiting an average of 43.8 and 41.3 weeks, respectively. These wait times aren't just inconvenient, they can be deadly. A study by the Canadian Medical Association found that over 44,000 patients in Canada died while waiting for medical treatment between 1993 and 2009. That's an average of over 2,600 deaths per year, a staggering toll that underscores the real human cost of big government inaction. However, healthcare is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the costs of big government. Education, too, has become a bureaucratic nightmare in Canada, with a complex web of provincial and federal regulations that stifle innovation and drive up costs. According to a report by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or the OECD, Canada spends more per student on education than almost any other country in the world. But despite this high level of spending, Canadian students consistently rank below average on international math, science, and reading tests. The problem, according to many experts, is that the Canadian education system is bogged down by bureaucracy and red tape. Schools are forced to comply with a dizzying array of regulations and mandates, leaving little room for experimentation or innovation. But perhaps the most egregious example of big government overreach in Canada is the country's bloated social welfare system. From employment insurance to social assistance programs, the Canadian government provides a wide range of benefits to its citizens, benefits that come at a staggering and nerve-wracking cost to taxpayers. According to a recent study published by the Fraser Institute, federal, provincial, and local governments in Canada spent $352.1 billion, inflation-adjusted, subsidizing firms from 2007 to 2019, more than was spent on national defense over the same period. This corporate welfare, which does little if anything to stimulate widespread economic growth, came with huge costs to government budgets and Canadian taxpayers. This total corporate welfare price tag, which included $76.7 billion in federal subsidies, $223.3 billion in provincial subsidies, and $52.1 billion in local subsidies, reflects unrequited government transfers to businesses but excludes other forms of government support such as loan guarantees, direct investment, and regulatory privileges for particular firms or industries. So the actual level of corporate welfare during this 13-year period was much higher. Of course, taxpayers ultimately bear the cost of government spending on corporate welfare. For Canadians who filed taxes between 2007 and 2019, the latest year of available pre-COVID data, the cost per tax filer ranged from a high of $18,785 in Saskatchewan to a low of $6,048 in New Brunswick. The three largest provinces were big spenders, with corporate welfare costing $18,334 per tax filer in Quebec, $13,285 in Alberta, and $12,627 in Ontario. That's a significant amount of taxpayer money unavailable for other priorities. The costs of these programs and government actions go beyond just the financial burden they impose. They also create a culture of dependency, one that results in Canadians being discouraged from taking risks and pursuing their dreams. In a country where the government provides cradle-to-grave support, individuals have little incentive to strike out on their own and create something new. Why bother starting a business or pursuing an innovative idea when the government will take care of you no matter what? This culture of dependency is a major problem for Canada's economy and one that stifles growth and innovation. According to a report by the World Bank, Canada ranks a dismal 23rd out of 190 countries in terms of ease of starting a business, behind countries like Georgia, Macedonia, and the United Arab Emirates. In an actual sense, the costs of big government go beyond just the economic impact. They also have a profound effect on individual freedom and personal responsibility. When the government takes on an ever-expanding role in society, it inevitably begins to infringe on the rights and freedoms of its citizens. From speech codes and hate speech laws to regulations on everything from food production to home renovation, the Canadian government has become a meddlesome presence in the lives of its people. And as the government's power grows, so too does its appetite for control. In recent years, Canada has seen a disturbing trend toward authoritarianism, with the government seeking to silence dissent and stifle free expression. From the forced closure of churches during the COVID-19 pandemic to the government's attempts to regulate social media and impose new restrictions on online speech, there's a growing sense among many Canadians that their basic freedoms are under attack. But perhaps the most insidious effect of big government is the way it erodes personal responsibility and self-reliance. When the government takes on an ever-expanding role in society, it sends a message that individuals are not responsible for their own lives and choices. A prime example of this inefficiency is the Phoenix Pay System fiasco. Launched in 2016 to modernize the federal government's payroll system, the Phoenix project was plagued by cost overruns, technical glitches, and mismanagement. As of January 2022, 2022, the government had spent over $2.4 billion on the system, which has left thousands of public servants overpaid, underpaid, or not paid at all. The cost of the project, including fixing the problems it has created, is estimated to reach $3.7 billion by 2026. This erosion of personal responsibility is a significant problem for Canada, one that threatens to undermine the very foundations of society. When individuals are no longer held accountable for their actions and choices, it creates a culture of entitlement and dependency that is difficult to break. Why bother saving for retirement when the government will provide for you in your old age? Why bother taking care of your health when the government will pay for your medical treatment? So what can be done to rein in the excesses of big government and restore Canada to its former glory? The answer, according to many experts, is to embrace a more limited government that focuses on its core functions and leaves room for the private sector to thrive. This means cutting back on the size and scope of government programs, reducing regulations and red tape, and lowering taxes to spur economic growth and investment. It means embracing free market principles and encouraging innovation and risk-taking in the private sector. But perhaps most importantly, it means restoring a sense of personal responsibility and self-reliance among Canadians. It means encouraging individuals to take control of their own lives and make their own choices, rather than relying on the government to do everything for them. This won't be an easy task, of course. Big government has become deeply entrenched in Canadian society, and powerful interests benefit from the status quo. But suppose Canada is to thrive in the 21st century. In that case, it must break free from the shackles of big government and embrace a more dynamic, free market economy. The alternative is a future where Canada continues to stagnate, weighed down by the burdens of an ever-expanding government that consumes resources and stifles growth. It's a future where innovation and entrepreneurship are discouraged, where personal freedom is curtailed, and where a culture of dependency and entitlement holds sway. As the government's size and responsibilities continue to grow, so does its insatiable appetite for revenue. The ever-expanding bureaucracy and its myriad of programs and services require an ever-increasing amount of funding, which ultimately falls on the shoulders of Canadian taxpayers. In 2022, the average family, including unattached individuals, earned cash income of $106,430 and paid taxes equaling $48,199. This means the total tax bill of the average Canadian family in 2022 amounted to 45.3% of its household income. This is larger than the combined 35.6% of household income that families spend on food, clothing, and shelter. This heavy tax burden not only leaves Canadians with less disposable income, but also hampers economic growth and job creation. High tax rates discourage investment, entrepreneurship, and risk-taking, as individuals and businesses have fewer resources to invest in their ventures or create new opportunities. Moreover, the government's inefficiency in managing these resources further compounds the problem. Unlike private sector entities driven by competition and the need to maximize profits, government agencies often lack the incentives to operate efficiently and effectively. This leads to waste, mismanagement, and a poor taxpayer return on investment. As the government continues to expand its reach and consume more resources, it crowds out the private sector and stifles economic dynamism. The result would no doubt continue to be a less competitive, less innovative, and less prosperous Canada, where individuals and businesses are increasingly dependent on government extravagance and unstrategic generosity rather than their own ingenuity and hard work. If you like this video, hit the like button and help us spread the word. And don't forget to subscribe to get notifications on our latest news and analysis. In the meantime, check out one of these videos here to learn more. Thanks for watching.